All right, let me turn this coffee music off, and then we'll get rolling. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you for coming back. I really do appreciate you could be anywhere else, and you're here with me, and I appreciate that. Those of you who are at home watching us, thank you on the couch. That's pretty cool to say because it's my first time saying it, so thank you, couch people. Welcome back. Building or Bridging Stories here. Remember, our mission is we want to build relationships and have conversations. A disclaimer, we're not going to assume that we're all on the same diversity level, and we're not here to make people feel bad or guilty no matter what race you come from. We want this to be a safe place for everyone, and we are here to build relationships. We're here on our journey map. We're on session 2, but before I talk about our journey map, I want to give you good news real quickly. I know we're here in Mason. I just want you to know that we just booked again at Lebanon. The city of Lebanon has reached out to us and asked us to come back a third time, and I'm looking at Amy Kobe because that is her community of Lebanon, and we will start there. It will be Wednesday, April 13th. And then the 20th will be the second session, the 27th, and then we'll eat in May, hopefully back to the Golden Lamb. All right, let me bring it back to Mason. I don't want the Mason people to get jealous about the Golden Lamb, but that's, so I just want to throw that out there real quick. Okay, so last week we did session 1, and we had my team share their stories. Now this week, session 2, we're going to have you share their story. So we have the community share their story. We'll divide the time based on the number of participants. And then next week is section 3, and I will tell you this session probably won't last as long. This is normally the quicker one. Next session, session 3, sometimes that's known to run over. I want you to know, my people who've been here before, I did cut out one or two things to make that even shorter, so hopefully we'll be good. But in session 3, if you're gonna come back next week, count for maybe additional 10 or 15 minutes at the end. And in session 4, as you know, it's a fan favorite. We're gonna break bread, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. I would like to thank the team. Can we give them a round of applause for the great job they did? Team is awesome, obviously, and once again, I thank God for this team. I could not have put them together by myself, no way. So I really appreciate that. And there's more on this team that's not there. Farah is one of my members of my team has been as well. And then we've had connections to it as far as Chris and other members Heather, who's always been here for me at the Mason session. Heather Verschee has been amazing. And then I've also borrowed the projects too. And I borrowed a lot of people, and now I have the Prescotts who should be packing to go to LA, and they're here. Thank you. Okay, how many are willing to share tonight? Just raise your hand. I have 1, I have 2, 3, 4, 5. Did I see a hand? I'm not forcing it. 6? No. Oh, she's sneezing. Oh, who wants a cookie? Okay, well, let's do this one more time. How many are willing to share today? Raise your hand. One more time. All right, so okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's a great point. When it comes to sharing, remember, I know sometimes people may see me and think, well, is this always going to be racial? No, it's not. It could be racial if you want it to be. It could be something political if you want it to be. It could be something about your background if you want it to be. It could be a hurt or a pain if you want it to be. It could be something profound or maybe a situation where you help somebody else. Something that maybe has been a big piece of you, who you are. You may share that. So I want you to know it's not just goes out on race. Yes, I am here to build relationships between races and political sides of the spectrum, but this is including to all different aspects of life. So that helps. And no pressure. I tell that all the time, no pressure. Okay, so real quick, we're gonna go back into our groups, and we had a reflective activity. This is your homework. If you forgot, I will remind you, is what do people see about you first, and what do you wish people knew about you first? So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna try to calculate while you're in small groups to figure out how much time I'm gonna give you. But right now I need you to go in groups about 4, no more than 5, and each take about 30 to 45 seconds to share what do people see about you first and what you wish they knew about you instead of that. So go ahead and break, and then I'll figure out how much time we got, and we'll come back together, and we'll get rolling. Okay? Ready and break. So wait. Was that 9? That was 9? Okay. Okay, we're going to bring it back. Yeah, we can move seats back. Go right ahead. We'll bring it back. We'll move seats back. Thank you for everyone for sharing. So as we come back, yep. Thank you, everyone. It sounds like you all have fun. So I think that's key. That's a big piece of this program. And I want to tell you that for me, I feel like it's really important that we need to build relationships, have conversations, and talk about the other side. You know, the big piece of this is knowing that we do have limited perspectives. So when I have conversations, I've had conversations a lot, especially since I moved to Loveland when I was in junior high. I learn a lot from the other side, and at the same time, they learn from me as well. So I really feel like it's really important to gain other perspectives. And so then when I built this program, and one of the things I kept getting requests on is like, hey, I would like a safe place to share out. So I wanted to do that in session 2. So I have a rhetorical question you don't have to answer, but when we talk about getting or talking to the other side, you know, where do we go to learn how to talk to each other? And so I have this slide up there, and it's not really meant for you to see the individual TV stations. Just know that the TV stations are on the spectrum. A quick fact, the Weather Channel is even up there, which I thought was interesting, because I never would have guessed that. But it's like, where are we going to learn how to talk to each other? And now we have 24/7 news, and if they're not doing it, then who is? And so I want to at least be locally one of the places you go to so that we can talk to each other. So with that being said, I'm going to share 2 stories, and then we'll get rolling with the community because that's why we're here. And so the first story is about Mr. Ring's class, and this is a true story. It happened last year. And so I share this story because I kind of want to like share with you an example of me personally when it comes to perspectives. So I walked into Mr. Ring's class, and he is a social studies teacher, and there's 2 girls working on a project, and I said, hey, what are they working on? And then Mr. Ring said, oh, they're working on a states' rights project. I said, states' rights project? Oh, great. So I turned to the girls and I say, hello, girls. How do y'all feel about states' rights? And they said, we're for it. I said, really? And I just looked at Mr. Ring. And I just gave him a look. Now, time out for a second. Okay? Based on our experiences, even just that little story alone, we're going to hear different things. Here's what I mean. If you're a brother, my brother or sister on the right, and you hear states' rights recently, what are you going to hear? You're going to hear about mask mandates, right? You probably favor Governor DeSantis in Florida, and you're having an eye on what he's doing down there, and you're liking it. And you're probably not going to like Governor Newsom in California. You're going to have an eye on him and say, that guy's crazy. So if you're on the right, you hear states' rights, you're hearing mask mandates, maybe, you know, are things opening up or not. Those are the things that you're hearing. Okay, so me being an Afro-American, when I heard states' rights, what did you think I heard? You can say it. What did you think I heard? I heard Jim Crow, right? I went straight to Jim Crow, and you may say, hey, that's wrong or not, but that's exactly what my mind went to when I hear states' rights. I went back to Jim Crow. Okay, but what were they talking about? He's a teacher. The girls are talking about marijuana. So for the record, because I know this is on TV, I am not here to promote marijuana. That's not what I'm saying. But in that situation, I'm not here, was it confirm or deny? I don't know. In that one little scenario, there was 3 different perspectives that were formed. And I got grumpy initially because when I heard those girls say states' rights and they were for it, my mind went to Jim Crow. You see that? And then Mr. Ring said, oh, no, that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about marijuana. And then I brought up the right for you as another example of, hey, this is what they're thinking about when they hear states' rights. So I thought I'd bring that up. I have one more story, and this one's very, very interesting because this involves me and my 4 friends here and the casino. So we all go to a Penn State game, and we go to a casino just before that Penn State game. We had a great time. And I want you to look at this picture, and I'm not the youngest one there. You see the guy with the glasses with the tongue out? He's definitely the youngest one there. And I share that because I want to tell you what happened. So we go into the casino, and we walk in, and I was, for whatever reason, I was the last one to walk in. And so when we walked in, I was the last one, but yet I was the only one that got carded. So I'm thinking, okay. So we walked. Then afterwards, I was kind of down for a little bit. It kind of affected me. I was kind of reflecting on it, not quite sure what to think about it. Well, the big guy in the middle with the Penn State sweater on, he used to play for Penn State, but he also was an officer. So he says, hey, and he was setting me up a little bit, and he says, hey, Akeem, what happened back there? And I said, well, isn't it obvious? I mean, we all four came in, but I was the only one that got stopped. I go, I'm not the youngest. Why did I get carded? And he says, Akeem, we've been friends for a long time. I saw the whole thing. I said, okay, shoot, give it to me. Because at this point, you know, I crossed my hands. All right, what did you see? And he says, here's the deal. He says, when you walked in, your body language changed. Your demeanor changed. Your body shifted. Why did it shift? When I said, first I acknowledged that what he said was true. I'm like, you know, you're right. When I walked in and I saw the officer, my body did kind of change a little bit. My demeanor did change. And it did that because of everything that was going on. I wasn't quite comfortable. I didn't know what was going on. It wasn't that I feared the cop at the time, but just George Floyd, the cop, me, I wasn't quite sure what to think. So yes, it did change. And he said, here's the deal. And he says, yes, it does seem like on the outside that could have been a racist move. But he goes, I used to be an officer, and I retired as an officer. He says, when we see somebody's demeanor change, we're not trained to turn away. We're trained to go investigate. He was doing his job. And I said, you know what? You know, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that because I do remember that moment. Now, some hearing this may say, nope, not hearing that, Akeem. That was a racist act. And that's on you, but I have a good friend here who's a former cop, and I'm going to listen to him when it comes to demeanor. I think the bigger situation is, well, let's build relationships between maybe myself and police officers in the community. And that way, my demeanors or other demeanors won't change that will entice or tell a cop, hey, you need to dig further. So I thought it was interesting that that relationship between officer digging further as part of their job and someone who's a little bit feared and demeaning changing, which I thought if you see a lot of things going on out there, you kind of see why maybe we have some of the situations that we have out there. But of course, I'm going to say it goes back to relationships. So I wanted to share that story, and then I'm going to give you all about 7 minutes apiece, roughly. If some of you finish earlier, then I'll just go ahead and give it to the next person. I'm going to stand in the back, though, so I'll give you the hand when you have a minute left, and I'll give you 2 hands. It was like, all right, shut it down. But this is all about you, so I want you to come up. Who is up first? Come on up. So I want you to come up here. I want you to tell everybody your name, and you'll get started, and I'll get the clock in the back. So make sure you tell everybody your name, and thank you for volunteering to go first. What is your name? Yeah, give him a round of applause.
I'm Steve Prescott, and I just wanted to share one story. I grew up in Amherst, Massachusetts, which is a college town, and so I had already been exposed to new ideas left and right. So that's not really what my story was, but when I was younger, I worked as a camp counselor at a Baptist camp in eastern Massachusetts. Just file that away for just a minute. So my freshman year at Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts, I wanted to go to an Easter service because I hadn't really been going to church. It was in college, and I didn't really make those connections right away. So why am I telling you this story? Hold on just a minute. So I decided to walk. I didn't have a car. I decided to walk to the nearest church that looked like I could walk to and go in, and I did that. And I was a half an hour early to that service, and I sat down. And I waited for people to come in, and a few people came in, and then a few more people came in, and then I started looking around, and there were about 40 or 50 people. I was the only one of this complexion. And then 100 people came in. And then another 100 people came in. Still, I was the only one, only white guy in the room. And I was apprehensive, but at the same time, I wasn't leaving because I knew this is where I was going. So what was cool about the story is it was the best service I've ever been to. It was rocking, great music, great sermon. I was totally engaged, never felt like falling asleep like sometimes I have in service. And why I'm telling you the story is a band came out too at some point, and there was a drummer. And I knew that drummer. His name was Gabe. And so after the service, I said, Gabe, I didn't know you went here. He said, what are you doing here? And we made that connection. Where did I know Gabe from? The camp. To Hakeem's point, it was about relationship. I mean, that place felt very cold when I was there because I didn't feel like I was in my element. And yet, even if Gabe weren't there, I would have felt warm and welcomed. But because he was there and I'd formed relationships in a smaller setting, that connection was automatic, and I felt even more welcomed. I felt like I'd gone there many weeks in a row. And the strange thing about that is, this was the one Sunday that church took an annual photo. This is the first and only time I'd been to that service. And so I said, well, I'm just visiting. Thank you. I really appreciate the service and all that. And they said, no, you have to be in the photo. I'm like, but I'm just a visitor. It's okay. No, you need to be in the photo. So somewhere in Worcester, Massachusetts, there's a photo with like 300 black parishioners and Steve, right? And to Hakeem's point, that's what it is about relationship and putting ourselves in places that we wouldn't necessarily hang out. Now, since that time, I've often considered to myself, like, why are most of your friends white? Why are most of your friends Christians? Why are most of your friends teachers, coaches? And I keep prodding myself to that, to say, you need to be somewhere else to be uncomfortable. So not as a safety thing, but just to know the other perspective and understand it is about relationship. And it's not about black and white. And it's not about this or that. It's only about forming relationships. And let's face it, our DNA is almost identical. It doesn't matter what your faith is, what your sexual preference is, what your identity is, whatever it is. We just need to have a relationship with each other. And I think that's what causes us to be a closer community. And I did that day in that church. And that I remind myself of that constantly, that I hadn't planned to see Gabe, didn't even know he went there. But that's what made me feel welcome. Thanks for hearing.
Thank you very much, Steve. Now we're going to do the same thing we did last week. So we're going to all look at Steve, and we're going to say, that was powerful. Thank you for sharing that with me. All right, 1, 2, 3. Powerful. Thank you for sharing that with me. Okay, and way to go first, too. I appreciate it. Who is up next? Yes, come on up. Don't forget to introduce yourself, and thank you for sharing.
Do I have to talk to the microphone? Feels very awkward. I'm Heather. I teach at the high school. First, a little background about me, and then just a couple of stories. I was born and raised in Mason. My parents moved here literally right before I was born. And as you heard from one of our team members last week, Mason was predominantly white the whole entire time I was there. In fact, I can count on 2 fingers how many non-white students were in the building the entire time I was there. One of them graduated with one of my older sisters, and one of them graduated with me. Luckily, still connected with both of them because they're great people. It had nothing to do with anything else than they were wonderful people. Went off to Miami University, not a huge change in demographics there, and then was lucky enough to come directly back and teach here. I love Mason for what it's become, and I love Mason for what it was. I learned a lot being a teacher. One of my first, it was either my first or my second year, I had a student named Joe. His hair was probably about as long as mine, except for he had the sides completely shaved, and he wore it in a mohawk that was brightly colored with Kool-Aid. I found that out after asking, and he made it stand up on end with Elmer's glue. I asked. Joe was not a terribly strong math student. I'm a math teacher. But he came in for help on a regular basis and was sweet and kind and worked really hard. And about halfway through the year, at one point when we were working after school, I looked at him and I said, okay, Joe, I have to ask. I said, you know me, and I'm asking this from a place that I'm just curious. And he said, all right. Not really 100% sure what I was going to say next to him. He wasn't sure. And I said, you know, you see me. And I said, and I'm white suburbia. And all in one body. And I said, and I look at you, and I don't see what I know. I said, and you have to know that when people look at you, they see the hair, and they see the very goth kind of clothing, and the chains, and that kind of stuff. I said, you've never broken a rule. You've never been mean. I don't care, but you have to know people see that. And he said, I know. And I said, so why? I don't get it. And he said, why not? And I sat for a minute, and I said, okay. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, now I'm going to say something that's probably mean. I said, okay. And he goes, someday I'm going to have to look like you. I said, okay, that's fair. And he goes, but right now I don't. So why not? And I thought, okay. And I think from that moment forward, it was more about getting to know the kids and getting to know my coworkers than worrying about all of this. I grew up in the era of colorblind, which I know is a dangerous side to things. But he really changed what I looked at when I looked at my students. And when I look at people that I meet, that I want to talk to them first, and I want to hear from them first, and I want to feel from them, as opposed to just this. So, to piggyback on Steve and Hakeem, relationships really are important. And I am thankful that we have a staff that shares their experiences and helps us learn, because I don't know what I don't know. And I will try not to make mistakes, but I will make mistakes. And I hope someone will treat me with a little bit of care and teach me, as opposed to just cast aside like some people have with Joe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heather. Okay, everyone, on the count of three, we're going to turn to Heather and say that was powerful. Thank you for sharing that with me. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I have a little confession. She's a plant. She's one of mine. Little confession. Maybe I should have let that one go. But I just love that story. And I just love everything she shares about it. Okay, let's go. Who is up next? Okay, come on up. All right, come on up. Tell me your name, and thank you for sharing. Watch yourself there.
Hello, my name is Farah. I live just about 20 minutes south from here in Deer Park, my cute little neighborhood. A little bit about me. I was born in southern Indiana, a really small town. I think there's still like less than 3,000 people there at the time. Within 2 years, we moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana. So all the way to the bottom of Indiana to all the way to the top of Indiana. This matters because in Fort Wayne specifically, there was a huge Lutheran community. I think we had 8 or 9 elementary schools that were just private Lutheran schools. We had 1 Lutheran high school, 2 Catholic high schools. All that being said, there was a lot of religion in Fort Wayne, and there still is to this day. We kind of accidentally, or my parents accidentally put me in Lutheran preschool when we moved there, and so it just kind of gradually, okay, I guess we're Lutherans now. Well, that was easy. So I did go to Lutheran Elementary. I went to a Lutheran high school for a year as well. And that matters because the schools I went to were very opinionated on lots of different topics. And so my parents became opinionated on those topics and so did I. So I grew up for the first at least 15 years of my life thinking, well, this is the right way. This is biblical. This is what everyone around me is being taught. So on a lot of different topics across the board, I thought that was the right way, and anyone else was just wrong. That's what we were taught. And that's probably what a lot of us were taught growing up in a couple of different ways too. It wasn't until we moved to Lexington, Kentucky when I was a freshman that we didn't end up going to private school there. I went to public school for the first time in my life. That was really eye-opening in a lot of different ways. But for the first time in my life, there were lots of people who thought lots of different thoughts about lots of different topics. And I became friends with a lot of those people who had conversations with me that I had really never had before about topics that I had never considered before. And I think that was the first time in my life that I had kind of the realization of, so what I get taught, I don't have to believe. Interesting topic. I'll think on that for a couple of years. It wasn't until I went to college down in Montgomery, Alabama, that was really pressed upon me. We had a class in freshman year of college that was all about kind of the theory of thinking and why do you think the way you do, and is it maybe time to change some of those thoughts? And this was a Methodist college, so that was some pretty controversial teaching, I feel like. But that was kind of the opening for me, again, to break into, is what I've been taught what I believe? And do I have to think that? Do I have to have the same thoughts of my parents or my grandparents or just trusted adults in my life at that time? And so all of this being said, and something that we'll kind of continue to talk about next week, I know too, is that, it's really hard for me even now, a whole decade later, to think about conversations like race, sexuality, identity, political stance, because I'm not only having a conversation about that one topic. When you tell me at the age of 18 that, hey, maybe what you're thinking isn't really true, and there's a couple of different sides to that, I have to think about, well, again, I was taught about race, I was taught about politics, I was taught about all these other things. And so is it, my parents that taught me wrong? Is it my pastors that taught me wrong? And I don't think it has to be thought about that way. I think that, as a young college woman, still as a young woman now, I just took away from that I get to have my own thoughts and opinions. And a lot of young adults are thinking that way, and not to disrespect our elders or our grandparents or our parents, but just to say, we get to have our own thoughts and feelings about topics. So yeah, I'm still breaking down a lot of those things in my head. I'm still kind of deconstructing and reconstructing my faith as well. And so this is a topic that kind of has broadened across my entire life. And I hope to keep kind of deconstructing and reconstructing my thoughts about things. So just a little bit about me and my story. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Farah. I really appreciate that. Okay, everybody, we're going to turn to Farah on a count of 3. We're going to say, that was powerful. Thank you for sharing that with me. 1, 2, 3. That was powerful. Thank you for sharing that with me. All right, who is up next? Oh, come on up. Come on up. We have another. That's great. And then let us know who your name is or what your name is. And thank you for sharing.
Barely see over this. I'm Suzanne Prescott, and I grew up here in Cincinnati, but not in Mason. I grew up in Norwood, in a part of Norwood where I always tell the story. Childhood was a little different there for me. I remember the last time I got in big trouble, and it's because I was in a house I wasn't supposed to be in. I was in 4th grade. We were hanging out in this girl's attic, and it was middle winter, and it felt like I was in a greenhouse because there were pot plants growing everywhere with sunlights, and I got in huge trouble when I was home because when I got home, my mom had been looking for me, and she was like, whoa. So that's kind of the childhood I grew up in, and without much diversity. I heard there were, I didn't know it at the time, but there were unspoken sunshine laws in Norwood. You just didn't go in there after dark. And when unlike Heather, when I went to Miami, I had a whole world open to me because I had a roommate who was doing a French major, and we went to the international club. And so I met a ton of people that looked nothing like me, and became really close friends actually with a gentleman there that actually helped me get through college. Like, I would have failed stats class. I probably would have failed my political philosophies class, and I was a poli-sci major. But he was a man from Nigeria. And I think that's where the empathetic side of Suzanne came about around race, because we wanted to go out one time, and I was like, okay, let's meet, let's go out. And so he's like, oh, no, no, no. We're in Oxford. We are not walking together to Oxford. It is not safe here. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? And I always thought, my parents would always say, well, we're not racist, because my dad lived in Blue Ash, so I kind of had two worlds I was living in, until I brought, his name was Femi. I brought Femi to a family function, and I'm telling you what, we were never romantically involved, but I would have been lucky. He was a great man. And, but because, I didn't mean, as my husband says it, no, he was, because Steve became friends with him also. And my dad said, Suzanne, please tell me you're not gonna marry a black man. And the irony is like, he would have never married a white woman either. And this is a man who actually, by about my junior year, said, you need to come to church with me. And I mean, what a wonderful guy. You know, he was working on his doctorate in political science. And I think that Femi brought me back to really my faith, as well as just hearing the stories. It broke my heart that we couldn't walk together. He didn't feel comfortable walking together uptown in Oxford at the time. And since then, just have had a lot of stories, because I think I just started listening closer, and I had more friends. I have a nephew who is a quarter Filipino, and we have the curly hair. He has the dark skin. And a few years ago at Christmas, he just said, you know, he's a big guy too, really strong. And this came up, and he looks and he says, well, yeah, every time I get pulled over, they handcuff me. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, they're kind of afraid of me. He said, I've just learned to say, can I just sit in the back of your cruiser while you check out my car? So it just helped me. Femi, I have a lot to owe to him, because it just helped me be more empathetic in a lot of ways.
Shout out to Femi. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, on the count of three, we're going to turn to her. We're going to say, that was powerful. Thank you for sharing that with me. 1, 2, 3. Very good. All right, who is up next? Okay, come on up. Ladies first. Come on up. Don't forget to share your name, and thank you for sharing. Okay.
Hi, my name is Tina. I don't know, I think maybe to start just a little bit about me. I grew up small town Ohio, blue collar family. We were not racist. We knew people who were racist, and we were not those people. Like, we watched the Jeffersons and everything, so like it was, you know, like that. I don't know. Like, there was a very clear dividing line between those who were and those who weren't, and I was not. Fast forward like a gazillion years, and my husband and I had just had our first son, and we knew that we were going to complete our family by adopting a second. And so whenever you decide to check the box of adoption, now you've got a lot of other decisions you get to make. Domestic or international is like the very first one, and for a lot of reasons, international was the one that we went with. And then you have to figure out what country, like there's a whole world out there. And we ended up going with Ethiopia. And I, at the time, I didn't even consider that race would be an issue. I didn't think I didn't think about it at all. We were looking for a little girl, and I don't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. As we made that decision, the reality of the fact that I was going to be raising a brown child in a white family. And about that time, a guy that I work with started a group very much like this, of just conversations. And so I started learning all kinds of stuff. I was in my 30s and heard of redlining for the first time. There were just so many things that I just didn't know anything about. And was listening to stories of people who didn't have, their lived experience was not my lived experience. I was learning that there were things that were true about the systems and the inequity in some of the systems that I didn't ever have to see because I didn't have to see it. And so I literally didn't know it existed. So now, couple that with the fact that I'm bringing home a child into my family that I think, oh no, is this even fair to her to do? Am I equipped to be able to, I'm charged with raising a strong, confident black woman. Holy cow, I am not, I'm not prepared for that. And so when I have a problem or I see a challenge, then I will read it into submission. That is kind of the way that I go. And I read things into submission. And I read books. I specifically wanted to find African-American women authors. I wanted to hear those voices. I wanted to learn more historically. What are these systems that I really did not know were unfair? And I don't know, just trying to piece all of that together and bring a child home. I mean, at the time, I thought my biggest concern was how can I handle the hair issue? Like what, this did not prepare me for the hair that I was gonna have to handle. So that I thought was gonna be my biggest challenge. And the conversations that I get to have with her about how to be confident in your skin and how to be safe in your skin when I'm not there. When I'm with her, whether I like it or not, whether it's right or not, my whiteness protects her in a lot of ways. And so when I'm not with her, and we're getting to that stage, she just turned 14, bless us and keep us. Our son is 16, thoughts and prayers, I don't even know. It's a whole lot, but we're entering that phase where she's more and more not gonna be with us. And will she be safe? And can I keep her safe? And have I taught her enough to be safe? While not being afraid of the world at the same time. There are just so many pieces to that I just did not know when I was trying to figure out how to do hair. And her hair is on point. I mean, just to be clear, her hair is on point. But I don't even know. It was a lot. I think I've gotten a front row seat to a lot of things that a lot of white people don't get to have a front row seat for. When we go on vacations and where we go and we think about what we're gonna see there and how will we react depending on what happens there. We've been places where we've walked out and thought, we won't go back to that restaurant. It felt like we were the main attraction at the zoo, and that's just not, I don't know that I've ever experienced anything that I felt was hostile, but boy, have I been on high alert a lot of times. Yeah. Yeah, we do have, there's a group of moms. We get together a couple of times a year. Well, COVID kind of slowed it down, but we would get together a couple of times a year. We all have kids from Ethiopia, and so we kind of get together and can look specifically, because the cultural piece is also, people will see my daughter and assume that she's African American, and she may end up finding that that's where she identifies the most, but her culture really is Ethiopian, and that's a different culture than what you're gonna see here. So all of those pieces, like it's a whole cornucopia that I just didn't know was coming. So it has enriched my life more than I can even begin. I don't know. The kid from the small town, the blue collar family, I just didn't really see this one coming. But we're loving it. And I've learned that thinking that there are racist and not racist is way too simplistic. I wish that it was that simple, that you could be one or the other, but you're just not. I've all of my reading, reading it into submission, I've learned to look at my biases, because we have them. You can't live in this country and not have them. And so what are those, and how do I handle them? And just all of the pieces that go into that, to learn to have the humility to listen to someone else's experience and believe them when they tell you what their experience is, even when it's opposite of mine. Like, those are the pieces. To believe my daughter when she says, this is what's happening and this is how I feel about something, instead of trying to convince her that everything's okay. Those are pieces that I've learned a lot, and I still have a ton to learn, and I don't know what the next, well, we've got 4 more years to get out of high school. It's just a lot. There's so many pieces, and it's been amazing and scary, and I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it for anything. But that's my story. So.
Thank you very much. Okay, everyone, I switched it up. I don't know what to say, but thank you for trusting me. On 3, 1, 2, 3. I don't know what to say. Thank you for trusting me. And by the way, I did make a mistake real quick, so I just realized it. So Tina, Suzanne. So I didn't say your name specifically when I pointed at you, so sorry about that. I want to make sure I back up. So sorry about that. I just realized I did that. All the stories get me excited, and I just kept going. Okay. Who's up next? All right, come on up. By the way, y'all are rocking it. Y'all doing a fantastic job. I just want to say that. Come on up. Make sure you tell them your name.
I'm Dan, the other half of Tina, and grateful to be with you tonight. So about 4 days ago, we said a final goodbye to my father, the last of 4 parents. I was adopted, so I got to have 4, and my dad was the last to go, and he'd been sick for about a year with kidney failure, and so we were more than ready for him to stop suffering. So it was kind of a situation like that. But both my adopted parents came from very, very abusive, toxic families, and what's interesting is that they made it out and worked at making themselves better. And my dad was born in Russellville, Alabama in 1944. And he was one of 13. And I think it was hard to probably come out of Alabama during that time period without some racist beliefs. It's just we got lots of historical evidence from that. We've got lots of stories, images we've seen. And my mom was from Ohio, but they eventually met. I think my dad's family moved up looking for work, and they met and married young. My mom was still in high school, and they came to faith. They became Christians at a young age, early in their marriage, and I think that was important, because I think that was part of what helped begin to teach them some new ways, begin to unload some of that toxicity that they had grown up under, to learn some new patterns, and so I think their faith helped with that. I think that their some mentoring that was happening helped with that, and so then they would go on to have 3 children. They had 2 biological children, and then they adopted me. I became the youngest of 3, and they took us to church every time the doors were open, and so I have them to thank for my own faith. And while I'm doing some deconstructing of my own, I appreciate your story there. I still that early exposure was very important, but growing up in that environment, like it or not, there were beliefs that came from Alabama, I think, that were shared in my family. And we would never say that we were racist, because who wants to say you're racist? But there were definitely things that were said that we knew we were better than. And we were in a mixed race neighborhood, probably lower middle class neighborhood. And there were things that were said about some of the different families in the neighborhood. And again, we would never say that we were racist, but we would point out things like a lack of a father in the home, or crime being prevalent among the children, or unkept homes or unkept yards. And we just knew that we were better than. And again, I don't know that we would even say that, but I know that I grew up believing it, and so there was just it was kind of alluded to, and there were some things that I remember being said. My dad telling my sister one time, if you ever come home with a black boy, I'll shoot you both. Now my dad, he was a rageaholic. He was a rageaholic that went to church and had some issues. It's hard to pull some of the toxicity out of you, even if you go to church and you love Jesus. It's a lot of times there's a lot that has to be healed from, right? And I think he was in process his whole life, but his bark was often more than his bite. And I know he loved my sister too much to follow through with that, but still the threat was there, and I think it was out of fear of what that might produce. But either way, it was said, and I remember it being said. And when I was young, when I was very young, we were on vacation, and while we were on vacation, 4 or 5 black boys broke into our home from the neighborhood and just destroyed it. I mean, they ripped wallpaper off the wall, and they tore up the house. They stole items. They urinated on stuff, defecated. I mean, it was a mess. And I remember coming home and just being fearful of what had happened, and being angry about what had happened. And what I didn't realize was that seeds of hatred and fear were really sown in me that day, that I began to, it caused me to judge an entire people group. And I didn't really learn that until later. I went on to some of the change that started happening in me began with a friend who began to call out things I would say. She'd be like, "You can't say that, that's racist." And I remember thinking, no, I'm not racist, I'm just sharing an opinion. That's I just genuinely believe that it's not racist. And she'd be like, "That's racist." And she kept on with that, and I appreciate that, because I valued her opinion. And so she did, and I think that was an important part of change for me, was just being kind of called out by somebody I cared about, and believed that she wanted what was best for me. And but then later on, fast forward to I was taking college helped. Again, some of you have referenced, seeing different people and getting out of my small hometown, seeing different people and hearing about their stories and where they came from, huge at helping give me a bigger worldview. Heck, even just a worldview. It was fantastic. But then graduate school, I was taking a course called History of the African American Church. I was one of the only white males in the room, and I like to talk. I do it for a living. I'm a teacher as well, and the professor at the time, African American woman, she's talking about the history of the African American church, and as I'm listening, everything's my fault as a white male. Over and over again, all of the pain that the African American community had gone through was my fault, and I just kept hearing it was my fault, and I was to blame, and I was just getting angrier and angrier and angrier, because all I kept saying was I wasn't there, I wasn't alive. This is stuff that happened before me, and I just couldn't figure out why I kept feeling like the fingers were being pointed at me. But somewhere about 2/3 of the way through, I had a flashback, and I liken it to an epiphany or a God moment, where I just felt like God was showing me that moment as a 5-year-old when our house was broken into, and when I felt violated, I became fearful, and I became angry, and I began to blame an entire people group for something that happened to me. And I just was able to, in seeing it, then begin to let go of it and to realize that that's not fair, and that needed to change. And there was significant healing that took place. And I have to say this, so I didn't know if the professor was crazy or just extremely wise and discerning, because, again, I didn't say anything, but I said a whole lot with my face, because I don't have a very good poker face. My students usually know when I'm angry. And she comes up to me and she says, "I want you to give the final words for the class. Would you do that for me?" And I thought, "You're crazy." And so I did, and I shared this story of what happened in me through the process of that class. And I mean, there wasn't a dry eye in the place. I mean, the professor was weeping, and a lot of the classmates were weeping, and I was weeping. And I mean, it was a very powerful moment. And fast forward then to me marrying that friend who kept calling me and saying, "You can't say that. You can't say those things. That's not okay." And that same woman who worked so hard to be the best mom she can be, to raise up a strong black woman in our family. I have such admiration for her, and she's the one who, she said, what'd you say? You will read a problem into submission, and she does. And what I love about that is I do not. But what she does is then she will share with me what she has read, and we have conversations, and so she has helped train me up so that I can be a father who can partner with my wife to train up a strong black woman in our family. And so it's been a process, and I'm grateful to have a great partner in that. And we're still in process. We're still learning. We're still growing, trying to figure all this out. And so I'm grateful for those experiences. Thank you for listening to my story.
All right, Dan, we're going to go back up to powerful. How about that? Is that good? Dan, everybody turn to Dan. We're going to say that was powerful. Thank you for sharing that with me. 1, 2, 3. Powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Very good. Y'all are doing amazing. All right, who's up next? Okay, come on up. And I think we have one more after this, right? I think we just have one more. So we're doing really well. Go ahead, right? I'm not sure. Yeah, come on up. I think, right? We'll see. Well, come on up, tell everyone your name, and share your story, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marvel Slaughter, and I'm a paraprofessional at Mason. And is it Tina? You're not going to master, you mastered the hair? I'm 55, and I have not mastered the hair. Kudos to you. Well, I'm going to start off with a hair story. My father was in the military for 29 years, so I traveled all over the world. And you can have a traumatic experience. And when you have that traumatic experience, you can bring it into your own home. And I remember picture day. I hated picture day because my mom will doll me all up, put us on. Back then, you got on a dress. You had to wear this nice dress. And my hair wasn't braided. She would press it and curl it, and it was like you looked like Easter because it's picture day. And they'll line us up, and they gave us black combs. And they would comb everybody's hair. And when they got to mine, they would walk right by me. I was the only black person in my class till probably when I don't know, middle school. I didn't have my first black friend until I was in the 4th grade. So that went over with me, with my child. So I was like, they will not pass you over. So I would call the school, hey, what time are you taking pictures? When will you be there? I'm going to be there. And my daughter's 26. They didn't fix their hair anymore. They didn't care. I guess someone said, stop touching their hair. But I remember that. And I can't tell you that I was treated mean, because I wasn't. And I don't ever remember someone treated me different because of the color of my skin. I was loved. I think I just had the favor of God on me. I was treated extremely well. I spent the night with my white friends. When her mother kissed her, she kissed me. My mother did some crazy stuff that she shouldn't. She let me lay out on the street and put baby oil on me. When they did it, I think, no, that's probably why I don't like the sun now. So I have those remembrances. So I have always been pretty much practically all my life the only black woman in a room. So I'm very comfortable here. I'm used to it. I do, and when you said Alabama, I was like, she went to Alabama State? when you said college in Montgomery, because I got to grow up in Alabama a little bit. And I just been blessed. I know people who were born in 41 in Alabama, and they're wonderful white people. So I don't know if it was a favor of God that was on me. He just shielded, and he put me and my family around great places. Obviously, it didn't hurt that we lived overseas a lot. And we lived around a lot of people that economically made what my father made, and we had a lot of the same life. So I got to shield. I will say when I came to Ohio at about 37, it did change. I did get to see the difference. I wasn't in my safe military community anymore. So things changed there. But I do know that, I guess, I don't know. I don't get to see what some people say. My whole family is diverse. I can't tell you how many, mixed race nieces and nephews I have. I have a lot. I know that we were all in Pigeon Forest, and my sister-in-law is white and my brother-in-law is black, and she's like, I hate it here. Do you see how they stare at me? I didn't even notice it. I didn't notice it. And then one of my nephews, my brother-in-law, said that it was a white woman who said to him, he's white, and said to him, like, you guys should be shot for having that baby. And he was like, yeah, meet me at the end of the hill, So I don't know, I was shielded from that. I am not shielded from that anymore. I do know races exist. I think I do have a gift where I don't have the biases that other people have. I do think that I can stand back in your situation with you being carded. I would be one of those people that know carding you wrong and not carding everybody else. I can see it, and I can even see how your demeanor change, but I also would be able to see in a situation like that, I'm gonna card the whole party. I would card the whole party because something about this party, it is an individual that looks suspicious. So I'm one of them people, I won't judge everybody because I think we do have a biases, and to say that you don't, I was just sharing with my daughter that that's a godly wisdom that he puts in you, and you don't have to run from that. You do need to use some wisdom with it to know that, is this me, treating someone different based upon their sexuality or their age or things of that nature. And so that is, I've been in love with God my whole life, and that is something I pray daily, that you give me godly wisdom, because we do have those biases. And I'm not unapologetic for them, me personally, because if you come in here with dreads and dirty clothes and, I'm going to be like, okay, But, I also know that I'm not going to immediately judge you first just because you come in here with a suit, or Armani suit. I'm not going to think that, you're okay too. I'm still going to use that same wisdom. So I know my 7 minutes is probably up. But I do want to say that I just kind of wanted to say that it is okay to be who you are and to have, those different experiences. And it's okay. It's kind of, I don't know why I keep being the only black person, though. I swear I do. I guess it's just supposed to be that way, because it's funny, because I wasn't going to come to Mason. I've always been that way in my jobs. I've always been the minority. So I said, I'm going to Cincinnati Public, where there's a lot of black people, because I've been in like 12 of the schools, and I want to be, one of the majority. And then Mason called me first. And I said, well, okay. And Brandon offered me the position like immediately. But then I had another interview, and they offered me the position. I was like, what do I do? I'd already said yes to Brandon because I hadn't had the other interviews. So, but it was funny. I'm here, and I just really believe that's where God wanted me to be. But I really did want to be someplace where I was the majority, but it didn't fall that way. But I did go to a HBCU school, and that was the best thing for me. It was just, it was an amazing, amazing experience. Not because I was just with people that looked like me. It was just amazing because it's really diverse if you really go to HBCU school. You think it's not, but it really is, because it's just is. People want an education, and it's a local school or whatever. But I thought it was amazing because for the first time I had leadership, that looked a lot like some of my family members, and that was great. So I also brought my daughter up, and I was like, hey, HBCU, HBCU. But then I realized I had poured that into her. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, you got to make up your own mind. So I made her tour like 10 schools. She got into Ohio State, and she loved it. But then she ended up, choosing a HBCU school. But I wanted to make sure that I just wasn't, as parents, sometimes you can just do that. But it's great. And thank you for sharing with me, and thank you guys for listening. I really do appreciate you and your stories.
Thank you very much, Marvell, for sharing. All right, on 3, we're going to turn to Marvell, and we're going to say that was powerful. Thank you for sharing that with me. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I believe we have one more left, right? Come on up, tell everybody your name. It's the last story, and then I'll close after that. All right, come on up. Tell me your name. Don't be scared.
All right, I need this shorter. I'm not as tall as Hakeem. So I'm Chris. I just want to say hi, Mom and Dad. So my story is probably a little bit tougher than to follow that. Yours was a little bit more lighthearted than mine. And I just want to say, if I had teachers like y'all, my story would be a lot different. Y'all are amazing. I'm not going to go all the way back, but I'm going to go pretty young. So about the time I was 4, I grew up in a family of all sisters, and then my parents had me and knew that I was not going to quite be like those sisters. I grew up straight up telling my parents I'm a boy, I can't wear a shirt, I will not wear a shirt. That's just who I am. Fast forward to kindergarten. First person I see on the playground asked me if I was a boy or a girl. And I had never been faced with that question before at 5 years old. And I actually had to ask my mom about this later, and she told me that I promptly told them that I was a boy. All that to say, that's who I am, guys. I know that answers some questions. That was one of the things I said with the first question is, what do people see when they look at me? And I think they perceive more of what they think I am. I think people get very confused when they look at me, and I'll bring up a carding story as well. There was one time, I went to the gas station, I was buying cigarettes, it was what it was, and he asked me for my license. And that always kind of gives me the jitters, because I'm like, oh, what are you going to look at? I know you're not looking at my birthday. And that's exactly what happened. He said, he looked at it, he saw that it says female, and then immediately was like, oh, well, what about this? And I tried to explain to him, I'm not a female. I know that's what it says, but that's not who I am. And he was like, oh, did a guy treat you wrong? Is it like that? And I promptly left the store and never went back. Thank you. And that's just something that I've kind of had to deal with, which is a very interesting perspective of, I really am hesitant to give my license, and not even for any good reason other than I don't want you to look at that. I just don't want to be perceived. I want people to have that conversation with me, Don't be afraid to ask someone. If you don't know someone's pronouns, straight up ask them. No one's ever going to be offended by that, in my opinion, as far as I can tell. And that even went on to high school, where I had teachers that treated me very poorly. I actually almost failed my gym class because they wouldn't let me change out in a different bathroom other than, the girls' locker room. And I said, absolutely not. So I dressed like this and did gym class, and that's just the way it was. And then I went to vocational school, and I decided to take automotive collision, which is predominantly a male class. And there was one female in that class, and my teacher didn't see me for who I was, and I always got paired up with the girl who didn't actually want to be there. So I'm outshining this girl because I'm great. I loved it. Made me look real good. but I ended up getting passed up for a lot of opportunities that I could have been great at, just because my teacher didn't think I had the skill purely because I don't have the parts, which is ridiculous. And it's really just kind of opened my eyes to even, race. I don't want to be treated poorly like that as a person in the LGBT community. Why would I ever treat anybody else like that? Which is kind of how me and Emily ended up standing in Bethel after everything that happened, just kind of standing in solidarity with Black lives. And me and our daughter ended up being assaulted, which we got charges pressed. Woohoo! And that really brought me to where I am today. I actually work with Undivided, which this is my 3rd and 4th cohort that I'm going through, which is racial reconciliation work. And that's just become a really big part of who I am and what I want to do, is I just want to stand in solidarity with everyone. I think everyone should be everyone's neighbor. And that's how I think I want to end that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Chris, for sharing. Everybody turn to Chris. On the count of 3, we're going to say, that was powerful. Thank you for sharing that with me. 1, 2, 3. And real quick, I do want to add, when it comes to Undivided, we have no problems promoting Undivided. Undivided is a great program that's run through Crossroads. It's free. They do a great job. It's a little bit longer. I think they're more like 8 weeks, or they're 6 weeks. They do the dinner as well at somebody's house. Great program. So feel free to absolutely suggest it. So I'm going to finish with 2 stories and a sign. And let me check the time real quick, see where we're at. It is 8:16, so we're good. We'll get you out of here, no problem. And I want to share these stories because a lot of times when I have these conversations, I like to talk about some of the issues, racial issues, without talking about racial issues. Meaning that, yes, a lot of times you may hear that it's about race, but like some of you said it tonight, sometimes it is just a relationship, or sometimes there's something else within us that is keeping us from that. So I want to share some stories that I want you to think on, and then we'll close. The first story, so I'm going to make it light a little bit. The first one is a travel story, and my question to you, anybody know where this is? Go ahead and say it. You can say it. Where is it? All right, New Orleans, right? So here's a picture of New Orleans. And, for me, being born in L.A., I understand what sea level means because, I go to the beach at sea level, and then I come back home. Okay, so then, throughout my life, before the first time I went to New Orleans, I always hear about New Orleans, and New Orleans is below sea level. And I always say, well, what do you mean below sea level? Say, I understand sea level from LA, going to the beach, sea level. So what do you mean below sea level? And so I went there recently, and I brought back a picture with me to share with you. And when I first went there, I was surprised. So for me and you living in Cincinnati, if we go downtown in Cincinnati, we look down at the riverboats that it would go by, or the barges. We look down. We physically, our head is down, and our eyes look down, we see it go. In New Orleans, they look up, which sounds crazy. So in this picture here, where I'm standing, where I take that picture, my back is to the river. So you see that there's a downhill to the city? That's what they mean by below sea level. And so then when I recognize this, and when I think about events like Katrina and other things that are going on, I'm thinking, oh my God, okay, so that's what it means. So that's light, but that's something I just couldn't comprehend. But here's what I had to do, though. I had to go there to figure out exactly what was going on. And probably a local would tell me I still don't understand. But I wanted to share that story because, one, I like to travel, and 2, I thought that was pretty unique. The next one is my cousin Michelle. So when I go back to LA, I stay with my cousin Michelle. Michelle's been great to me. Michelle's a professor at UCLA, and she's awesome. So during COVID, I took a road trip to go visit LA and visit my cousin Michelle. And we always go on a walk. And every time we go to the same place, the same path, we do the same walk. Well, this time, she says, hey, let's go on a walk. I said, perfect, we'll go outside. I lead the way. I start walking out. And she says, hey, I don't want to walk today. And I said, well, why not? This is the path we always go. And she says, well, I don't know how to explain it. And sometimes when somebody starts with, I don't know how to explain it, that should have been the first clue, but I didn't pick up on that. But she said, I don't know how to explain it, but since COVID, I've seen a lot of, crazies out there, and I haven't felt comfortable walking as walking around, and so I'd rather kind of drive closer to that point and we can walk from there. So initially I said, we're good. No, just come, let's just take a walk and it'll be fine. Okay. So then I turned around, I was getting ready to walk, and then I paused for a second. And this is, when this happened before I did my first session. And so something in my head said, okay, wait a minute. So you're going to dismiss her story, and then you're going to go back to Ohio and talk about how people shouldn't dismiss stories? Didn't make sense. But the bigger question is, why did I dismiss her story? And so I share her credentials about her being a UCLA professor, and I share that I stay over the house for a reason. So she is older than me, not by much. I better be careful in case she is watching. I sent her the link. She is older than me. She has more degrees than me, and she's a professor at UCLA. So I would definitely respect her. Her house is definitely bigger than mine, and it's in a nice area. It's in, she's doing better than me. So I do, so what is it? All I know is I can tell you this. I got up to this point. One, I had no business trying to share her story. But when I think about my story, I drove to the 275 loop. I drove up 71. I go to Mason. You know what I don't see? I don't see crazies, and I don't see homeless. Because in our area, it doesn't look like that. Why? Because we're more of a suburb area here. And in LA, that's more of an urban area. So it's going to be different. And so I didn't see that here, and then I tried to transfer it to her there. But it wasn't racist. And I really believe it wasn't sexist, and I definitely respected her, but that still happened. I was going to overrun her story with my experiences. And I've heard that happen throughout, but I want to give you an example where I mess up. So then, pause over. I turned around and I said, you know what, Michelle? You're right. Let's go drive over there. And we got in the car, and I said, Michelle, I'm sorry. And I apologized to her. Now, I can tell that she accepted my story, but I can also tell that she was definitely kind of hurt by it. Not a lot, but she was still kind of taken off by it. And, I'm not saying the car ride felt uncomfortable, but I definitely felt it like, ooh, I messed up on this one. A lot of times when I have conversations with people, sometimes, especially my naysayers or disbelievers, whatever it may be, sometimes they want data and proof. And I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of times where I cannot provide data or proof. And in this situation, even though she didn't need it, she kind of provided data and proof. So sure enough, we passed by two different men who had heckled her the time before. So I go from feeling this big to like this big. And so I share with you that because that's something, this is a black on black thing. So it's not always just racial. There's other things going on there. It's about taking the time, pausing, and thinking about what it is we're actually doing. And so that night, I felt better. Yeah, we were able to laugh and talk about it. And then it became a past issue. And I said, obviously, I got to share this story when I get back. And she gave me permission to. And then lastly, sometimes we don't know what to do with information that we have not either heard of before or maybe something that's out there we've never seen, even it's been right in front of our face. So some of you might know what I'm getting at here, but just curious. Who doesn't know about the FedEx Arrow? Okay, somebody's afraid. Let me just change that subject. Raise your hand if you know about the FedEx Arrow. Raise your hand if you know. So if you look around, go ahead, look around. The people that don't know about the FedEx Arrow, they're a little nervous right now. Even though this is a safe place, what is this guy talking about? There's no way he's going to talk about something false in front of ICRC and in front of everyone else. So he must be saying something right. But what is he talking about, the Arrow? I know of that company, but I don't know what he's talking about. No problem. For the people out there who do not know about the FedEx Arrow, I'm going to walk over here very quickly and show you. In FedEx, a company has been around, and no, they are not giving me sponsors, by the way, but if they do, that'd be nice. The FedEx Arrow is right there pointing that way. You see it in the E? It's like a fat arrow pointing that way in the X. Everybody see it? There's a FedEx Arrow right there. Just a regular arrow pointing that way. The X and the E is kind of like covered. Did everybody see it now? We don't do well with information, especially in our older ages. We don't do well with new information with old situations. We just don't do that well with it. But with relationships and feeling safe and not making someone feel, either we're blaming them or we're charging them or whatever that be, we can come through this together. So I share that story with y'all because I wanted to give you another example of just kind of how we think when it comes to these conversations. All right, let's come to a close. We want to thank you again for communicating respectfully. Thank you all for sharing your stories. And I want you to know that, like, some of you I know, some I don't know, but this is one of the more powerful ones that we've had for session 2. And it was really, really good. Next week, we're going to do a breakdown together. We're going to work more in small groups. We are going to have to say bye to ICRC. They're covering the last session and this session. But I'm going to give you homework before we go of reflective activity. Think about a person that you know has a different set of beliefs, views, or values, and ask yourself what is stopping you from having a conversation with that person. Now, here's what I want you to do. I really want you to give that person a call. I want you to give that person a call. If you're not able to, I understand. But if you are able to, what I would like this time around, I would like for you to invite that person to the dinner in 2 weeks. So that's new. I want you to invite that person to dinner in 2 weeks. So just so you know, that dinner is free. We'll be providing that. And I think that'll be another way to build relationships. So invite that person to dinner in 2 weeks if you can give them a call and you feel comfortable. If not, but we are going to talk about that next week. And you'll have more time in small groups to talk amongst yourselves. Deal? All right. So with that being said, thank you again. Have a safe drive home, and don't forget to love your neighbor. Thank you. Bye, ICRC. Can we wave to them? Bye. Thank you.